Traders, how are you? Marcello here, founder of the Day Trading Academy. Today we're doing the recap of what happened in the markets last week. So overall this week, U.S. stock futures rebounded on Monday after earlier losses of about 1.6% after Trump said, quote, that China wants to make a deal. He also said that Chinese officials called to try to restart the talks as well. On Tuesday, the market moved higher again. They were off the all-time highs of about 4%. Rallied Wednesday as well. And then on Thursday, on the hope of the trade tensions between the U.S. and China might ease, Thursday it rallied as well. And the U.S. stock market indices reversed earlier gains on Friday. And overall for the week, the Dow was up 3.02%, the S&P 500 2.77%, and the NASDAQ 2.72%. August ends up being the second worst month in 2019 after May. The Dow for the month is down 1.9%, the S&P slips 2%, and the NASDAQ will fare the worst at losing 2.9%. One of the things that's very interesting that they reported this week is corporate America leadership is selling their stock as doubts grow about the sustainability of what is now the longest bull market in history. The company insiders have supposedly sold up to an average of $600 million of stock per day in August. The fifth month in 2019 that insiders selling tops $10 billion. The only other time that that's happened is 2006 and 2007, right before the last bear market started. So, it's one of the things that I always like to mention when I do these videos, and even if you guys are listening on the podcast, you can download it directly on the site, daytradingacademy.com/blog, and then look for the recent post, or find it in iTunes or even, Spotify, wherever you guys like to listen. I want to make sure that first, I'm never going to get political, right? So if you love Trump, love Obama, hate Obama, left, right, black, white, yellow, green, I think we have enough politics in the world today. So I'm never going to get political. I'm just going to report the facts to you. And the second thing, one of the reasons why I really love to do these actual videos is to teach you how to be able to understand what's going on, kind of connect the two dots. And so the economy is great. Everything's awesome. We got some spats, right? Like the China trade deal and the Iran and North Korea and Venezuela and things. Why are the insiders of companies selling all of their stock? You see what I mean? So I always tell you guys, pay attention to what people do, not what they say, because the news always says what's convenient for them, not what's convenient for us. So I don't think it's a good sign that these people are selling their stock. And if you guys remember the immoral game that they're playing, that they're basically selling their stock, but the companies are literally buying it all. Get ready, guys. I hope you guys learn how to trade or do something to be able to go ahead and hold you through the next recession, because it's coming. I've been telling you guys for the last 5 years. Asian markets started higher for the week, mixed on Wednesday and Thursday due to the muting investor appetite for equities. There's also obviously worries the ongoing U.S. and China trade war. There's also a trade dispute between Japan and South Korea, which are both respectively very important economies in the global economy. Recession fears due to the waning global economy, and obviously the ongoing political crisis and situation in Hong Kong. And even though investors have been getting money out of emerging markets, Saudi Arabia is the only exception. They received close to $18 billion in equity inflows, not outflows, expecting another $5 or $6 billion this year. And one reason is the kingdom's addition of the MSCI Emerging Markets Index and other emerging stock indexes. So essentially, they've been added to a list of what funds, let's call them, invest, and they've been added as an emerging market, and that's part of the reason why their investments have actually gone up, not down. European markets are mostly higher. The biggest winner for the week is Italy with 4.15%. There was a great amount of news in Italy with the fact that they formed a new government that's actually pro the Euro's policies and all the bureaucratic nonsense they love in the European Union. And so that definitely has helped a lot in the Italian markets and overall sentiment in the European Union. Latin America and Canada markets, the biggest winner overall is the Mexican exchange with 6.93%, and the Merval in Argentina, again, the biggest loser at 8.03%. They've lost quite a ton in the last at least 2 or 3 weeks alone. Africa and Middle Eastern markets, Egypt, biggest winner, 3.5%. And Saudi Arabia, biggest loser at 5.56%. Asia and Australian markets are mixed, with India being the biggest winner at 1.72%. A lot of the other markets, the losers are actually marginal losers, to 0.10%, 0.12, things like that, but not any big losers. Bitcoin overall for the week down 6.05%. It went down to 9,596.50. Don't forget, it's still going to 50,000 this year. Wink, wink. Other than that, financial and banking news. Investors think that the trade war is actually forcing the U.S. Fed's hand on the interest rates. The CME Group's FedWatch tool is stating that the expectations of a 25-point basis rate cut, essentially they're going to drop it by 0.25. All these fancy words, right? I just want to tell you what it means. They're going to expect it, or the expectation, I should say, the probability, he says, of the rate drop by 0.25 is at 95%, and the probability of a rate drop of 50 basis points, 0.50, is 5% now, and it used to be 0. China's currency to the yuan against the dollar is at an 11-year low. The Chinese government is seeking to create a little bit of a buffer against the U.S. dollar due to the tariffs and also the situation with the trade dispute. Global markets and world currencies are also under increasing pressure, intensifying the U.S. and China trade war. And the Chile's finance minister announced that on Monday they're giving $600 million in extra stimulus to kickstart their economy. And they're actually the top copper producers in the world. They've been suffering a lot with a downturn in the mining and the world trade tensions. Standard & Poor's, which is a company that classifies debt for countries and companies and all kinds of things. It's S&P 500, the exchange in the U.S. It's Standard & Poor's, another part of the company. Argentina's decision, again, to unilaterally extend maturities on a short-term debt constitute a quote-unquote default, forcing the credit agency to downgrade the country's long-term foreign and local currency issue ratings to CCC, which means vulnerable to non-payment. I don't understand why people don't get that they're just not going to do what they're supposed to do. Like, everybody just keeps throwing money in Argentina like they're going to cross over a new leaf. There's actually a funny story when I was living in Argentina that I heard a few businessmen in Bariloche. If you guys want to hear it, let me know here in the comments, and I'll tell you. It kind of just epitomizes business and economy in Argentina. Argentina bond prices fell further, and the default risk is now soaring to levels not seen since 2005, the last full-blown financial crisis, since they have one what seems like every 10 years. And the stock market is down about 25% in 2 weeks. The U.S. Treasury yield curve, a recession indicator, inverted further on Wednesday. The 30-year Treasury yields fell to a new record low. Obviously, this is because of the fallout of the bitter trade global conflict. The difference between the 2-year and the 10-year was at 6.2 basis points, a level not seen since 2007. If you guys are new or don't understand how that works, essentially, the U.S. government borrows money for a certain period of time. They have, let's just throw out a few numbers, a 30-day debt or a 1-year debt or a 2-year debt. So they're going to issue debt, and then people buy U.S. debt because it's quote unquote secure, the securest in the world, supposedly. That's what people think anyway, right? So they borrow the money and they're supposed to pay it in 2 years. And I should say that the interest rate on the 2-year loan goes up. The interest on the 10-year, which is the long one, the longer term one, goes down, and they invert. So the shorter term interest rate is higher than the longer term interest rate. And that has been almost 100% indicator. I think the only time it hasn't been an indicator 2 times of recession coming. So one of the things, again, that I want you guys to learn and learn how these things work, this indicator may not be as reliable this time around due to the fact that we have the 0% interest rates, and that the negative interest rates that are literally popping up everywhere. I think it's, if I remember last week, I reported to you that it was about 30% of overall debt and growing. So everybody now is actually putting their money into, there's a slew of money. There's just a cash cow of money coming into the United States to be able to invest because they don't know anywhere else to put it because everywhere else they can't get a return. Imagine having $1 million, for example, you want to put it in a government bond in Germany or France, but literally you put in $1 million and by the time you get your money back, you have 900,000 or 999, whatever. But essentially, you're literally paying the debtor to give them your money. Instead of you let somebody borrow money, they pay you interest, they pay you back. In this scenario with the negative interest rates, if you guys don't understand, because I saw a few questions from you guys last week, you borrow the money and you have to pay them. Can you imagine? Like you're literally paying somebody to let them borrow money. It's completely Frankenstein's system. It's not going to last much longer. The U.S. 30-year Treasury yield fell to a record low 1.906%. That's because of everybody flooding into the U.S. dollar. The Bank of Korea is keeping its rate unchanged at 1.5% in line with expectations. And ICBC, which is the world's largest bank by total assets, jumped 2.5% in Hong Kong after they reported a 4.7% increase in net profit for the first half of 2019. And the Shanghai listed stock, they just went up 0.2%. Commodities, U.S. crude went up 1.72% to 55.10. International Brent, it's called Brent, the international oils, went up 2.65% at 60.43. Oil, however, is still down 10% this month. Crude prices moved lower in the beginning of the week on the outlook of increased supply of Iran oil after Macron, the French president, said that he's lifted hopes for a deal between the U.S. and Iran. Trump then said that he would be willing to meet with Iran, in which, in response, Iran said that he's not meeting or talking to anyone until they remove all the sanctions from Iran. So it doesn't seem like that's going to be happening anytime soon. BP is going to sell its entire Alaska business to a company called Hilcorp Energy for $5.6 billion with a B dollars. It ends a 6-decade presence in the state as oil output there declines, and the deal is putting the BP's operating stake in Prudhoe Bay and the Alaskan pipelines. Prudhoe Bay is actually the largest producing oil field in U.S. history, and they're transferring that over to this company, and that makes them, Hilcorp, the second largest producer in the state behind ConocoPhillips. U.S. is becoming a new energy powerhouse, I should say another powerhouse again. 61% of all new production of oil and natural gas is coming from the United States. 7 out of 10 new major finds are likely to be in the American states, and large new discoveries will be mostly found in the U.S., followed by Canada, Brazil, and Russia. Gold also surged to a 6-year high on Monday. It reached above 1,550 in early trading. Overall for the week, it went down 0.46%. It closed at about 1,520. Silver hit a 2-year high at 1,785. It went even higher as investors sought safety due to the tensions in the trade war between the U.S. and China, and also the overall numbers coming out of an overall weaker economy. Others as well have been reporting as well, and they're not as strong either. Other countries, I should say. Silver went up 5.37% to $18.44. In political news, UK Prime Minister Johnson is asking Queen Elizabeth II to suspend Parliament to try to force through the no-deal Brexit in October. In economic news, the revised Q2 GDP growth for the U.S. is at 2%, just slightly lower than the original estimate of 2.1%. France, socialist paradise, Eurozone's second largest economy, grew at 0.3%. Oh, wait. Slightly faster than the previously estimated 0.2%. You can see the difference there between capitalism and socialism. Other than that, Canada, I was going to say Canada. Canada is the 10th largest economy globally. It had a bust-out earnings or bust-out growth in the economy this week. GDP surged 3.7% on an annualized basis based on 2.3% expectations, and they left their interest rates unchanged. They're expecting to leave them much unchanged this coming week. India, the third largest economy in Asia after China and Japan. Their economic slumps are risking becoming a crisis. They're at a growth level not seen since Prime Minister Modi was elected in 2014, when he promised to return the country to become a global powerhouse. The GDP slipped to just 5% compared to 8% a year ago and 5.1% in Q1 of 2019. Slower growth will stymie the creation of millions of new jobs, which it was a campaign promise of his. Prime Minister Johnson moves forward on withdrawing the UK from the EU. The economy is in a weak state, and if they do a hard Brexit, that's going to definitely affect the economy and send it into a full-blown recession as the British pound continues to weaken as well. In corporate news, an Oklahoma judge orders Johnson & Johnson to pay a fine of $572.1 million to the state, in part for fueling the opioid epidemic by deceptively marketing addictive painkillers, far less than what people expected that they would have to pay, which is $5 billion. This is what happened with these companies, right? They do something illegal, they make billions and billions and billions of dollars, then the legal system comes after them and they end up paying 10%, 1% of what they actually made in profits. Same thing that happened in the financial crisis in 2008, 2009. These companies are selling these CDOs and these toxic financial products, and they made billions upon billions of dollars. Then they're going to go bankrupt because of that behavior, and the government bails them out. And I should add, for example, the reason why the 2008-2009 crisis happened wasn't because of the banks. It was because the Glass-Steagall Act, which placed a barrier between a bank and a broker that they couldn't be the same entity because they didn't want brokers risking people's hard-earned money that's in the bank. Well, that was removed by President Clinton, and that's what allowed this amalgamation of mega banks to be able to be created. So don't blame the banks, blame President Clinton, because he's actually the one that removed that law. When was that law placed? The Depression in 1929, right around there. So probably should leave it there, shouldn't we? Other than that, Megui, a technology company out of China, the largest artificial intelligence company, is going public for the first time as well. They're valued at about $4 billion. Avia, which is a Russian firm that leases aircraft, is suing the U.S. company Boeing over its grounded 737 MAX 8 jets. And obviously, this is the first customer to do so, and probably the first of many, because they're losing a lot of money because they can't put the planes in the air and make money. So they're, because of Boeing's recklessness, they're actually not making any money, or probably losing money, I should say. Trade news, U.S. and Japan reached a deal trade in principle. It's going to pave the way for more U.S. farm exports to Japan. Trump also announced after a meeting with Japanese Prime Minister Abe at the G7 summit in France that they had that deal in principle. Trump also said on Monday that he thinks that the U.S. is going to be able to do a fair and broad trade deal with the EU without imposing the threatened tariffs on car imports, which is throwing a lifeline to the stumbling German automakers and the overall economy of Germany. Chinese-based Huawei Technology plans to move forward to launch new high-end phones in Europe. They may not be able to offer Android and their apps and other Google services due to the possibility of the U.S. government sanctions on Huawei, even though they're still going to proceed with that. UBS, which is the world's biggest wealth manager, is now bearish on stocks for the first time since the Eurozone crisis, managing over $2.4 billion. They shifted to underweight recommendations in equities, advising wealthy clients that they should lower their proportion of stocks in portfolios. So check this out. Remember this. The immoral game that the CEOs are playing, right? They're selling their stocks, and the companies are actually taking out record debt to buy the stock literally from them, right? And now you guys can see that even now wealth managers are saying, hey, well, maybe you guys should lower your exposure to stocks based on what the expectations are now. U.S. and French trade negotiators supposedly reached a compromise as well under France's new digital tax, which more than anything was attacking a lot of the Facebooks, Googles, and Amazons of the world. It prompted Trump to threaten retaliation on French wine imports. Fund manager of Norway's $1 trillion sovereign wealth fund, the largest fund in the world owned by the country of Norway, wants to shift billions of dollars from European stock markets to invest more in the U.S. and North America due to better equity growth. And in Q2, for the first time in 7 years, overseas investors in U.S. commercial real estate became net sellers of properties instead of net buyers. This includes office buildings and also retail space, and it's a warning sign that the overall real estate market is experiencing a slowdown. In unusual facts this week, Indonesian President Joko Widodo, I hope I said that right, I'm sorry my man if I said it wrong, is seeking to ease pressure on the congested and the subsiding capital of Jakarta. He wants to build the new capital on the island of Borneo, where the site is the world's biggest coal reserves. The move to East Kalimantan is likely to cost $33 billion over 10 years, and the current Indonesia capital in Jakarta has a population of over $10 million, and it's going to go more than $40 billion in urban regeneration effort in the next 10 years. Small group of former rebels in the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, known as FARC, said in a video that they're going to rearm because they didn't have their promises fulfilled by the Colombian government 3 years ago. That said 3 years ago that they were going to do certain things. This is what they say. Probably shouldn't be a problem based on the original agreement due to the fact that it's only a small amount of members, then they'll be probably able to handle it. And other than that, my heart goes out to everybody on the eastern seaboard, Florida, Georgia, possibly some of the Carolinas, for the new Hurricane Dorian that's coming. Cat 4, hopefully, looks like we might actually just miss a little bit. It might not be a direct hit. So all of you guys stay safe, get your water, and I hope you guys have an amazing week under the circumstances. Let me know if you guys have any more questions. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you next week.